Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Exploring the Healthcare Professions. This week, we are exploring dietetics and nutrition with current MS student of Human Nutrition and Dietetics at the University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign, Sara Petty. How you doing today, Sara?
I'm doing great, Jacob. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, absolutely. We're glad to have you on. And so, as we're here and get ready to discuss dietetics and nutrition, tell us a little bit about your field and how you got into it.
The field of nutrition is broad. I like to break it down, just telling people that it's science of food and then applying that to how food affects our bodies. And so kind of originally, way back in high school, I was always interested in cooking and baking, and growing up, I'd watch this TV show. It's a cooking show called America's Test Kitchen. And they always talked about the science behind food and why it does what it does when you cook or bake. And I thought that was super interesting. And I think I kind of toyed with the idea of becoming a chef. And as some of you might know, that's kind of a cutthroat field and it can get pretty intense. And so I think my mom realized that I maybe was not cut out for that lifestyle. And she was the one actually that suggested that I look into nutrition. And it was a really cool way to combine kind of the science behind things, but then also getting to help people and apply that to people directly. So that's how I ended up here.
Nice. And is there a difference between dietetics and nutrition, or do you kind of use them interchangeably?
Yeah, so that's a great question. They can be used somewhat interchangeably for the most part. Usually I tell people that I'm majoring in nutrition as opposed to dietetics just because it's a more familiar term. But really nutrition is a little bit more general. So it's kind of, like I mentioned, the science behind food and how that affects our bodies. And then dietetics takes that one step further. It's actually kind of the application of how that affects people. And so would work in a hospital helping someone they were just diagnosed with diabetes or heart disease or something like that. So they're taking all of that nutrition knowledge and that science and they're kind of digesting it and making it accessible for whoever they're working with. And so kind of depending on the school, you could major in just nutrition and that gets you all that science behind everything. And then programs that have dietetics are the ones that actually are going to become a dietitian. So the path would look just a little bit differently, but overall it's very similar.
And you cut out a little bit there at the beginning. So you were saying dietetics are in the hospital. Is that what you were saying?
Yeah, so dietetics is specifically going to become a dietitian. And so nutrition is a little bit more general, but if you chose dietetics as a major, that's because you want to become a dietitian.
Okay. And with this field, you're now finishing up your master's. I guess how long does it take to complete to make sure that you have a job after you graduate? And then is it a good financial decision?
Yeah, so kind of the basic path to become a dietitian is that you would do 4 years at a university, so 4 years undergrad, and then after that's completed, then you would be able to do an internship. And that internship is specific to the dietetics field. You have to apply for that, but that's basically just 9 months to a year of supervised practice hours. And so kind of like clinical hours for nursing majors or, med school, things like that. You're just doing all hands-on rotations through different areas of the field to get experience in each one. So usually that's about 1 to 2 years, depending on kind of what program you do. Actually, as of 2024, I think it is, you'll have to have a master's. And so each of those programs will then become both master's and those internship hours combined. And so you'll be able to do, again, your undergrad and then go into that MSDI program. And that's about 1 to 2 years. So it can take up to 5 or 6 years total, kind of depending on what program you do, what school you go through. And then there are also programs that combine those kind of into one. And so they would combine the undergrad plus some of the grad classes and those supervised practice internship hours all into one. So it could be a little bit shorter. They're kind of revamping things right now. So it'll just depend on the program and how they're able to kind of fit all of that in.
And you're speaking of the different programs. what are the big schools and programs around the area that students can look into?
Yeah, so the ones that I know of for sure, I went to Bradley, obviously in Peoria, so that's a big one. It's a really good program. The University of Illinois has a program, Illinois State in Bloomington as well, then Eastern Illinois. Those are the four I know for sure. It's definitely a growing field, so a lot of schools are kind of adopting programs as well. So they're kind of all over the place, but those are the ones I know for sure.
And what made you decide to specifically go to U of I as their program?
Yeah, so when I originally applied to U of I, what I was really looking for was a research-based program. And so that's kind of unique to the University of Illinois. They're a really research-heavy school. It's kind of part of what they do over here. So that's originally why I applied, because I would get really good experience in a research lab. And I wasn't sure if that was something that I wanted to do in the long run. And so I thought it would be a good chance to kind of get that experience and be able to be hands-on with that before I actually decide to pursue that in the future if I wanted to.
And so you're going to finish up your master's, and is that where you're stopping? And can you go above the master's?
Yeah, absolutely. So I personally, I'm probably going to stop at a master's. Going in, I thought maybe I would go the PhD route, but I think after seeing kind of the research world and the academic side of things, I'm going to stop at a master's. But yeah, PhD is definitely an option, especially at a school like U of I. There's a ton of nutrition research going on all the time. It's a field that's constantly changing and recommendations are changing and all that good stuff. So definitely a great opportunity for master's or PhD if you want to go that route.
And with talking about going from bachelor's, master's, PhD possibilities within this field, what are the different careers? And because you mentioned it a little bit at the beginning, but maybe a little bit more specific, like what are the different careers you can get at each different level?
Yeah, totally. So there's a lot of different areas in nutrition, as you might imagine. So kind of the big ones are definitely clinical dietetics. So in a hospital, so that's working as part of the medical team, consulting with patients that kind of like I mentioned might have diabetes or heart disease, just went through a big surgery. So just helping them to make sure that they're eating well and eating in a way that will help whatever condition they have. So that's a really big one. That's usually what draws people into dietetics, wanting to go the clinical route. But then kind of beyond that, some things that I've seen in the past couple of years are sports nutrition, which is really cool. So a lot of bigger universities, so like Big Ten schools, have dietitians on staff helping their athletes to eat well and to make sure that they're fueling well for their performance. So that's a really cool one to think about. And then community. So a dietitian that's working to promote nutrition education. A lot of times that's with like government food assistance programs, so like WIC or SNAP benefits, working with those individuals to just make the most of what is available to them. A lot of times that's like cooking classes and just different things like that. Grocery store dietitians as well. All that kind of falls under community. So there's a lot of different things you could do with that one. And then food service, I think, is the next big one. So that's working usually in like a hospital or school setting, overseeing the food service operations, making suggestions for healthy, good food when possible, managing employees and budget and all that good stuff. And then kind of a different route, I guess, a little bit more flexible would be private practice. So there's always the opportunity to open your own clinic, whether that's virtual or in person, especially now with everything going on in a pandemic. A lot of dietitians are doing virtual counseling. So they have a big social media presence and kind of connect with their clients that way. So a lot of different options. And what's really cool about dietetics and a credential as a registered dietitian is that you could do any one of those. So as soon as you finish the schooling, you have the knowledge and you have the credentials to be able to go into any avenue that you want to. You can even do clinical for a couple of years and then decide that you want to go into sports or whatever that may be. So it's really, I mean, kind of a growing field. So there's a lot of different ways that you can go, and you're not locked into any single one, which is really cool.
And to back up a little bit, you were talking about dietetics in the grocery store and in schools. Can you elaborate on what that kind of looks like for you guys?
Yeah, so I actually did a rotation with a dietitian in a grocery store this past semester. And so kind of what she does is she's able to meet one-on-one with clients. So similar to an outpatient dietitian that you would be referred to like by a just typical medical doctor. She can meet with clients. So maybe they've been diagnosed with diabetes or heart disease, or are looking to eat healthier, maybe a low sodium diet, something like that. So just that one-on-one counseling is a big part of that. And it's nice because they're right in the store. So they're able to, they're very accessible, easy for people to get to. And then they also are able to do things like cooking classes or nutrition presentations throughout the community. So a lot of times grocery stores that employ dietitians will have kind of a demo kitchen in store. And so dietitians are able to bring people in for classes. They're able to do virtual cooking demos and kind of set up a camera, different things like that. So really anything that is promoting health and wellness within the community. So however they want to do that, or however the store typically sets that up for them. And then in a school, I haven't worked with too many dietitians that actually work in schools, but some of that could just be kind of on the food service side. And so making sure that the students have healthy meals available, making suggestions for ways to add fruits and vegetables to the meals that they're cooking, or, whole grains, things like that. And then kind of depending on the level, maybe also doing some nutrition education and working with classes and just teaching kids fun ways to eat healthy and different things like that.
Okay, nice. And speaking of those, you briefly talked about an internship at with the grocery store. Do you have any, maybe that internship, or do you have any other internships that really were formative for you?
Yeah, so kind of the way that dietetics works is that throughout undergrad, they have you get different experiences. And so they're not necessarily formal internships, but usually it's volunteer positions or things like that that help you just get experience with different dietitians. And so in undergrad, I worked with dietitians, outpatient dietitians doing weight loss counseling and bariatric surgery. And so I was able to put together nutrition education materials and bulletin boards and just kind of fun ways to help teach their patients ways to eat better. So that was a really good one. And then I also worked in a hospital kitchen. I think that was probably the one that I learned the most in, because I was able to see all of the different diets that these patients were getting, and also physically building the trays and bringing those up to them and getting to interact with patients and kind of talk them through maybe what they were getting on their tray, why that was happening, why those suggestions were being made by their dietitian. So that one was really awesome. I learned learned so much there. And then kind of, as I mentioned, as part of the path to becoming a dietitian, right now I'm in the formal dietetic internship. And so that kind of combines all of the different areas that I mentioned and gets you experience in each one. And so this year has been huge for just learning purposes and getting more comfortable as a future dietitian, because I've kind of rotated through clinical, food service, community, worked in all those different areas. And so it's been so fun to be in person, hands-on, getting to actually do what a dietitian will do in the future. So yeah, a ton of good experience there.
And so it sounds like there's a lot of real world experience that you get. How is the coursework when you're in the classroom? How is that? And how is the teacher to student interaction?
Yeah, so the really cool thing about dietetics, I've mentioned that it is a growing field, but for the most part, it's still pretty small, not super well known major in college. And so it tends to be pretty small programs. And so when I was at Bradley, there were 8 of us in my graduating class. And so every single class, we had a lot of one-on-one interaction with our professors. We knew them really well, and we're able to walk through the material and ask questions if we needed to. So from that standpoint, that was awesome. And then in terms of the actual like classes and what we were doing, there's a lot of science that goes into nutrition. And so there were a ton of science prereqs, and that can be a little bit scary for people, but I always tell them that, you kind of have that basis and have to take those foundation classes, but then once you get to the upper level classes, it's all nutrition. So it's kind of the fun side of science. It's not just be sitting in a classroom taking tests and all that good stuff.
All right, and then so I also know that you're going back to Bradley, your alma mater, to be a campus minister for the Newman Center there. However, once you get move on from there, what do you think you'll be doing specifically in dietetics and nutrition?
Yeah, so that's kind of the $1 million question right now. All of my supervisors keep asking me that. So the cool thing is that I have really enjoyed everything that I've done so far in these internship rotations, and I can really see myself in each setting, which is cool, but it also makes it hard to kind of know where I'm going to end up next. And so I think as of right now, I really enjoyed the clinical side of things, which is not where I expected me to enjoy the most. I was terrified to be in a hospital when I first started out, but it was really cool to see just the way that everything that I had learned can be applied to these patients, and getting to just chat with them and help them out and see how I could, be beneficial, even if they were only in the hospital for just a couple days. So I think clinical might be the route that I go. I don't know if I'll do inpatient in the hospital or kind of go a different route, but we'll see.
So why do you believe it is a great field for students to explore?
Yeah, as I've mentioned a little bit, there are so many different paths that you can take in nutrition. And as you can imagine, it affects everyone in some way, shape, or form because we all have to eat. And so I think it's a really cool field to get into because there are so many ways that you can kind of customize it and do, what you want to do within the field. You're not kind of set or stuck on one path. As I mentioned before, you can kind of hop around to different areas, always look for opportunities, and it really is a growing field as well. I know especially things like sports nutrition, community nutrition, things are just becoming a lot more well known and well understood, and people are seeing that nutrition really is vital to our lives and helping us to live happy, healthy lives. And so I think within the next couple of years, that's just going to expand even more. And so it's great to get in now, and just kind of get your hands dirty a little bit and get in there as people start to see how important nutrition actually is.
All right, I think that's a great answer. And do you have any final words of advice or encouragement for future students?
Yeah, I would say I know that I've mentioned kind of a lot of school that goes into nutrition and dietetics, and I just would encourage students not to be afraid of that. When it comes down to it, it really goes by so fast. And as I mentioned, a lot of it is getting in-person experience and hands-on experience. It's not just sitting in a classroom and taking tests about chemistry or biology or whatever that is. The programs do a really good job of getting us experience with actual dietitians. And so I would say definitely don't be afraid of the amount of school that it takes to become a dietitian. And then lastly, so something that I did not do a great job of was actually shadowing dietitians and seeing what they do day in and day out. It really wasn't until my internship this year that I was, with dietitians, walking with them, seeing what they do every day. And so I would definitely suggest either in high school or even early college, just kind of reaching out to some dietitians in the area, asking if you can sit in with them for a day, or even just, a quick phone call to see what they do and what they like about their jobs. Because I think that really has made me so much more excited to become a dietitian, getting to actually see what they're doing day in and day out. And so definitely would suggest doing that sooner rather than later.
All right, well, Sarah, thank you for joining us today and talking about your field. I hope that anybody watching got a lot out of it. And so next week we're going to be talking with the director of respiratory therapy at ICC, Mary Beth Kreger. Not only about respiratory therapy, but any other unknown or not as common health careers that we haven't mentioned so far, and how to start a path on those. All right, thanks, everybody.